You?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, no. I need him to be able to hear you. Can you hear her now? Because I had to go to another stream.
Hang on, I'm waiting for the new stream to pop up.
Okay.
Okay, I can hear Chappelle on it. We're
okay,
good.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you, Chappelle.
No problem.
Okay.
10 seconds, everyone.
All right. Mm-hmm.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Yep, everybody. All my morning stars, I had to pop up on another StreamYard feed. So please meet me. Just sign back in. That's all, everybody. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. What do you think about what's happening in Ukraine? Or do you have any thoughts at all? You should, because it's costing you money. It's costing you money. It's costing you money. And it's costing more than that, many people their lives. How did we get here? How do we get out of this? It's costing Americans money that we just do not have. We just don't have it. We don't have it personally, and we really don't have it institutionally. So at the top of the hour, we will be talking with Hilton Kelly about this environmental disaster that has unfolded in Florida and in Jackson, Mississippi, and how it is that Black, brown, and low-income people do not get the help from FEMA and from our government agencies that they need. The corporate media are at Sanibel Island. That is an affluent community. They're not getting the help. So what do you think is happening to the most vulnerable among us? And then, of course, we will be talking with Rick Smith. Of course, he is on from 8 to 10 every weeknight here on WCPT, and he will be talking about vigilante. We are going to be hosting Greg Palast at 930 East 50th Street. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a great event tomorrow night when we welcome Greg Palast. You can buy his documentaries, his books, and talk to him. And we're going to have a Q&A before, Q&A after. It's going to be a great evening. You need to be there, everybody. And we're going to be talking about voter suppression. Indeed, Barbara Arnwine and attorney Darrell Jones will be at Rainbow Push today at 10 o'clock. They're going to be pulling in. They're on this whistle stop tour. They'll be leaving Kenosha, Wisconsin, heading to Chicago. It's going to be a great time as we are pushing people to get out and vote. Chappelle, you're going to be serving some food tomorrow night, which is a great thing. Some light sandwiches, celebrations by us. What's going on?
Yes, Santita, we are going to be serving tomorrow some nice little lunch boxes for everyone that we're going to put together so that way everyone can enjoy a meal before the show. So give us a call at 708-526-4546. 708-526-4546. And we are busy, Santita, but God is good. I'm very grateful for all the support. We are currently right now prepping for Greg Palast event, as well as also an event we have this weekend, and we have another one at the end of the month. So don't hesitate to give us a call, 708-526-4546. At Celebrations by Us, we can not only handle your food, but also your decor. We do custom balloon arches, as well as also custom setups. And you can visit our webpage at celebrationsbyus.org, as well as also Facebook at Celebrations by Us. And look at all of our photos of food and decor. So don't hesitate to give us a call, 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you. Thank you so much.
God bless you, everybody. God bless you, Chappelle. See you tomorrow night. Hey, everybody. What about Ukraine? Well, we're seeing that Russia hit Ukrainian cities, several of them with heavy missile and rocket attacks. But then this weekend, Ukraine destroyed a bridge between Russia and Crimea. What is going on, everybody? We're talking, of course, with Bryce Green, journalist, brilliant journalist from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, and Professor David Gibbs, University of Arizona, their history department. Brilliant, brilliant writer and analyst himself, focusing on that part of the world. Professor Gibbs, what are we looking at this morning?
Well, there was an attack on the Kirch Bridge that connects, mainland of Russia with Crimea, which has become part of Russia since 2014. Illegally, but nevertheless, it is part of Russia effectively. And the bridge was built at very high expense to Russia. It's a major point of pride of Russia, and it's a major both civilian supply transit zone as well as a military transit zone. It is dual-use infrastructure. There's a truck bomb that was undertaken by the Ukrainian military intelligence, and it did significant damage to the bridge, and Russia retaliated by launching missile attacks against infrastructure in several Ukrainian cities. This is no doubt an escalation. The United States has, I think, restrained Ukraine from attacking the bridge before, but now the U.S. has evidently given a green light to Ukraine to attack that bridge. And, again, I don't see this as mostly at this point a Ukrainian-Russian war, but a U.S.-Russian war, really.
Why do you say that?
Increasingly so. Well, the United States is basically keeping Ukraine afloat. It's giving vast sums of money to Ukraine. I don't know the exact figure, but it would have to exceed its flow well over $60 billion. European governments are giving more. It's the amount of money given in the last 8 months to Ukraine since the war has begun are in the range of the entire Russian military budget. I should add this is both military as well as civilian aid, but it's a very substantial amount of money. And there's also been U.S. direction, some degree of U.S. direction of Ukrainian actions, satellite intelligence. And so increasingly, I think this is seen in most of the world as a U.S.-Russian war to a significant degree. And indeed, Leon Panetta, the former CIA director, called it a proxy war. The U.S. is in a proxy war with Russia. So I think we need to be honest, this is no longer just a Russian-Ukrainian war. But in any case, Russia did retaliate against infrastructure, and I think we'll see more of this. This is significant because the New York Times had reported, I think, a few weeks ago, that American officials until now have been baffled that Russia has not attacked infrastructure to a large extent. It has restrained its missile and air attacks against basic infrastructure for the most part, with a few exceptions. That restraint may be coming off now, signaling perhaps a more intense and more deadly phase of the war. And so I think things are going in the opposite direction where they should be going. Again, the phrase "the off-ramp" is something we're just not seeing here. The contrary, we're seeing continuous escalation.
By screening your assessment of what we're seeing. And let me add this, and how it's being reported in corporate media. I think that's very, very important. That's where Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting gives us such great insights, because it's not being reported that way, at least not in American corporate media.
Right. Well, as Dr. Gibbs said, that we're in a period of escalation that might be unprecedented during the war. We are in a proxy war with Russia. It's our weapons, it's our money who's funding the Ukrainians, and it was likely our intelligence support that contributed to the explosion on the bridge to Crimea. And now Russia has been clear about the consequences of further NATO involvement in the war, but NATO has been sort of escalating behind the scenes and doing the opposite of what we should be doing, which is trying to get Zelensky and Putin into a room together to avoid this escalation. And the media doesn't help things by only portraying one side of the conflict, right? You might as well consider the Western media an arm of the public relations department of Ukraine. I mean, whenever Ukraine has a battlefield victory, our media is exuberant. Whenever Ukraine blows up Russian infrastructure, our media cheers them on. But what you don't see in the media is any voices calling for restraint, calling for someone to be the adult in the room who push Zelensky and push Putin into negotiations. And this has dire consequences. As we said, that this morning, Russia struck several cities in Ukraine in a massive wave of strikes. And we don't know what else could be in store. But this is a direct result of the fact that this war has continued to go on. And what David Gibbs was talking about the U.S. officials being baffled about the restraint that Russia has been showing, that was from a New York Times piece about how a lot of people are trying to get Joe Biden to send more weapons, are trying to get him to send more heavy-duty munitions to Ukraine. But, him and some of the people around him are saying that no, we know that Russia has been restrained, and we know that any increase in the Ukrainians' military arsenal might be met with some sort of escalation. And that seems to be exactly what we're seeing now.
Call us at 773-763-9278. What do you think, everybody? What do you think? And what do you think about what this is costing Americans? Dr. Gibbs, I mean, if the numbers, at least that I've read as of Friday, put the cost, what Americans have paid for this, and we are paying for this, northwards of $67 billion. There are 330 million of us. That's $200 a person. And I mean, the money just keeps going over there. How does this advantage America to be at odds, to be at war with Russia? What is it that we want?
Well, it's always been a very extraordinary thing in American history that since 1945, there's never been the slightest problem in appropriating money for military acquisition, or at least not very much. Very seldom has there been a problem. And one sees it here, and that, for example, a few months ago, Biden proposed a $33 billion package for Ukraine. That was not the whole thing, but that was part of it. And Congress promptly upped it to $7 billion, by $7 billion to $40 billion, and unanimously passed it. Well, almost unanimously, not quite unanimously. The Democratic Party voted unanimously for it, I'll say that, without really almost any debate. And, it's unthinkable that anything, efforts to alleviate climate change or poverty or improve education, responses to that are always, we don't have the money. We don't have the money, but you never hear that with regard to military expenditure. And, for some reason, people view military expenditure, even for war in Ukraine, which, by any reasonable standard doesn't really affect American security all that much. There's always money for that, but really not for social spending to improve people's living standards. And, this is definitely going to come out of people's living standards. And the direct expenditure is only part of it. There's also the indirect effect of sanctions, massive sanctions, unprecedented sanctions against Russia, which by all indications are having probably a more dramatic effect on the United States and especially Europe than they are in Russia itself. There's the boomerang effect. And there's no doubt that the efforts to cut off exports of Russian grain, fertilizer, and especially oil and gas are having significant impacts on worldwide inflation as well as U.S. inflation. And of course, what's happening in Europe is going to be even more dramatic. There's concern in Germany about closing down industries. There's concern all over Europe about heating homes this summer. This frankly gets personal. My son lives in the Netherlands, and I'm very worried about, how cold it's going to get in his apartment this winter. And, all of these things are blowback from the war. This is not cost-free for America at all. This is very costly indeed.
It is not cost-free, but Bryce Green, it's not being reported that way. I mean, I was watching, I was in particular MSNBC this morning, and they were just cheerleading this war effort. They were saying, look, our economy is stronger than it's ever been in history. No economy can stand up against ours. That may be true this morning, but that might not be true tomorrow. I mean, you cannot continue to just spend on not just this war, but on all of these military incursions all around the world and continue to be in the black, if you will. Rice Green.
No, you're exactly right. They've been cheerleading these escalations. In fact, they cheerlead most of what America does around the world. It's not unfair to say that that's part of their job, is to cheerlead and engineer consent for U.S. policies abroad. A real serious media should do their best to give a balanced view of the situation, to take into account historical precedent, and above all, to be critical of the authority that they claim to be fighting against. But this media environment seems to be doing the opposite. They're cheerleading American policy. They're cheerleading the increase in tensions, increase in arms, increase in hostilities, and they're completely omitting all of the critical context that might lead somebody to question this. No one's asking why we need to weaken Russia. Everyone takes it as already settled that Russia is evil, that he's a Hitler-like figure who needs to be taken out, and that anything done in the service of that goal is therefore legitimate and worth spending billions and billions of dollars on. And like Dr. Gibbs said, this is dangerous to America because the sanctions boomerang effect seems to be harming the American economy, especially with the energy prices. But also, it increases the risk of nuclear war, which I don't think can be overstated. Putin has made repeated references to nuclear weapons. Zelensky has been extremely bellicose. He even called for a preemptive nuclear strike on the United States.
But
Do you
upon
think
what
that US
basis?
media criticized it?
No one criticized. Please amplify that, because I think that was something that was also missed. Because President Zelensky has repeatedly been trying to goad Americans into this and pull Americans into this. I'm like, wait a minute. Who are you? What are we doing?
Exactly.
Talk to me.
Right,
What did he do? He
presence.
called for a preemptive strike. Please let people know what happened.
Zelensky called for a preemptive nuclear strike on Russia. He said that that's what the U.S. should be considering. And Zelensky and his people tried to walk it back and say it was his words were taken out of context or misrepresented. But no, that's what he said. That is exactly what he said. And we're at such a fever pitch of tensions and the fever pitch of hostilities that sort of rhetoric should be considered completely off limits. It's completely irresponsible to be calling for that sort of thing, especially now. But U.S. media didn't seem to care much. They seem to be cheerleading the exact same thing that Zelensky's cheerleading. In fact, you have people coming on TV saying that we shouldn't listen to what Putin says about nuclear weapons. We should believe that Putin's bluffing. We don't need to take him seriously. But this is the height of irresponsibility. When anyone with nuclear weapons starts talking about nuclear weapons, any sane person would start listening, would start trying to de-escalate things. But instead, the U.S. has, increased hostilities. They likely helped with that bridge bombing. And now we're seeing, as this morning shows, now we're seeing Russia might be taking the gloves off, which means more destruction of Ukraine, more dead Ukrainians, and likely, of course, more U.S. weapons being poured in to make things worse. This policy is madness, really. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. At some point, there has to be an adult in the room. We can only hope that, just as with the Cuban Missile Crisis, our leaders are taking stock of where we're at and are doing their best to try and negotiate. But unfortunately, I see no evidence of that. In fact, I see the opposite evidence.
Well, Kissinger was shouted down when he
Biden
talked
and Putin
about
not talking.
negotiations, right? I mean, Kissinger, of all people. When he talked about
Exactly,
negotiating, we need to have, this should not go on, he was attacked by the establishment. So I said, Hitler is, I mean, excuse
Multiple
me,
times.
Kissinger is the establishment. What are you all doing?
Exactly. Like Kissinger is, one of the great hawks of American history. He's responsible for much of the war crimes that the U.S. committed in the mid to late 20th century. But even now, our leaders are to the right of him. Our leaders are considering Henry Kissinger to be too soft on the enemy, just because he's using his brain and saying that if we keep this up, we risk the destruction of the world. And, he's called for a peace deal. He's called for, Ukraine giving land for peace. He's called for negotiations. Well, if you pay attention to the current media environment, this is off limits. You can't talk about that. Otherwise, they bring up a Hitler comparison. You're appeasing Hitler, and Hitler must be opposed at any cost.
With the Azov Battalion, Dr. Gibbs, I mean, is the Azov Battalion, are they neo-Nazis, yes or no? Because I've gotten a lot of pushback from people. I'm like, wait a minute, it's being reported all over the world that they're neo-Nazis. But we're supporting
There's
them.
no doubt that they are basically a neo-Nazi radical right-wing organization, and they are, basically of the most effective battle units that Ukraine has had. They played a major role in the Mariupol siege and elsewhere, and they're now being celebrated by supporters of the war. And there's a whitewashing of their Nazi background. Only a few years ago, the mainstream media was openly referring to them as neo-Nazi or extreme right-wing nationalists. Quite regularly, we're referencing the Azov, battalion, or sometimes called the Azov regiment, in precisely these terms. Whereas, in a manner that really is a little bit reminiscent of Orwell, there's an effort to sort of forget all that history and erase that history. Now that the Azov unit is playing such a major role in the combat operations of Ukraine, and there always has been a definite sort of nationalist far right in Ukraine with very strong connections to sort of the forces during World War II that collaborated very closely with the Nazis and fought in the Hitler's Waffen-SS. And as a percentage of the population, they're not really that large, but they have enormous behind-the-scenes influence in Ukraine and appear to have pressured Zelensky early on to abandon his efforts to achieve a peaceful resolution to prevent war. And I think that's one of the main reasons we have war now, is that the far right has exercised this behind-the-scenes influence in Ukraine. That they've pushed the country towards war. And the United States media has been whitewashing this aspect of it. There's no doubt about it.
I want to get a final word from you, Dr. Gibbs, about, you just mentioned that your son is over in Europe, and understandably you're worried about whether he's going to be able to stay warm through what is a pretty brutally cold winter. Will Americans, what will happen to Europeans and what will happen to Americans? Because I just think that in this day and age, no one goes untouched by war. No one.
Right. Well, the most dramatic effect will definitely be in Europe, where they're having major deindustrialization. They're maybe shutting down major elements of industry because they can't power the industry. Possibly temporarily, possibly for good. And that's going to have long-term impacts on living standards in Europe and also worldwide to some degree. It will contribute to things like supply chain problems, especially in areas like chemicals, which are being heavily impacted by this. And it'll contribute to worldwide inflation. And it's already having a big impact on inflation in the United States. And people do need to realize that this war is even if it doesn't lead to nuclear war, and that's a very real risk here, very high danger, the effect on living standards in this country is already significant and will continue to be significant. And, I suppose the optimistic aspect is it's precisely that problem, the impact of living standards, that may eventually bring this war to an end as the public in the United States and Europe just gets tired of it.
We will see. I have to have you come back because everyone's leading the news with Ukraine, not to mention the fact that we're seeing an absolute escalation in the firepower. I mean, just blowing up the bridge a couple of days ago and then all striking 10 cities, recruiting 300,000 Russians. No, everybody. This is not cooling down. This is heating up, and we're going to feel it. We're going to feel it. Dr. David Gibbs, the brilliant Dr. David Gibbs from the University of Arizona, their history department, and of course, Bryce Green from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. Can't wait to have you all back. I'm going to tug on you for tomorrow morning because Ukraine's in the news and we need to talk about it. Everybody, let's talk with Hilton Kelly about what's happening with Hurricane Ian. Some people are calling this another Katrina for Black, brown, and low-income people in Florida who are Black, brown, yellow, white, and red. Yeah, they're saying that, we're going to Sanibel Island. It's hard to get there. It's hard. But Sanibel Island is an affluent community. Poor people of color, Black people are being left way behind. They're like, no one even told us that we could evacuate. I don't have internet. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. And Vigilante at Rainbow Push, 930 50th Street on Tuesday night. Come on out there so we can be with Greg Palast and talk with him about voter suppression and how we can vote in 2022. Back in just a moment on the Santita Jackson Show. Gentlemen, I'm going to call you, reach out to you tonight. Let me know if you're going to be available tomorrow. I just, I see this escalating, and I just think that we need to continue to talk about it. I've, gotten messages from people who are saying to me, well, Putin, Hitler, Putin. Let me see. Was Tio, you should have called me. You should come in. The Chance of Peace, Tio Hardiman, who is a brilliant activist here in Chicago. He said the chance of peace is just about gone between Russia and Ukraine. Bring me in there. I will help. I can help stop the violence. That is what he does by monopolizing all of the violence throughout the world, starting in Chicago. Soon we will monopolize violence throughout all of America. Then we will move from America to Ukraine and Russia and then to all of Europe and Asia and into the world. Look, honey, you've had so many people, Dr. Gibbs and Bryce Green, really come to the world to talk to us about peace.
Sending Hilton Kelly through.
Thank you. And we kill them all. So I'm just hoping, you keep calling me courageous, Dr. Gibbs, for taking this position. I don't know what else to do. I don't know if it's courageous or someone I know called me foolish. I said, well, I don't know what else to say. I don't know when war is ever a good thing. And when they were killing all these Black folks in South Africa, they just let it go on. I can never forget that. That happened in my lifetime. So I'm going to reach back out to you, Dr. Gibbs. My love to your family and to your son in particular. Sending you much, much, much love. All right, Hilton Kelly.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. How are you? I know you're like,
I'm
this
doing
woman.
well. How are you?
I know you're tired of the Jacksons today, but that's all right. Thank you for being so patient yesterday. And thank you for staying with us to talk about politics. I'm going to pull you onto some of these political discussions because I think that you need to be part of them.
Okay, that sounds great.
Oh, yeah. Because people need to know specifically that it is political advocacy that helps us to address these issues. And you need to be politically active before it happens to you. Your 401k.
Yeah, you got to be proactive.
Absolutely.
You got to be proactive.
Absolutely. The privatization of Medicare, all of that, that's a political issue. You've got to get involved, everybody. If you want a monarchy, somebody else can be in charge. But that's not what you want. It's not what you want. But everyone, all my morning stars, this is Hilton Kelly. He's one of the world's foremost environmental activists. I'm always so honored to have him with us. Indeed, he received the Goldman Environmental Prize. What is that? That is the Green Nobel. And we're so excited that he's with us today on Indigenous Peoples Day. That's right. Formerly, the holiday formerly known as Columbus Day. There you go. I love it. But let me bring this to you. Okay. Let me bring this up. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Pardon me. You know, because when they went to Sanibel Island, Mr. Kelly, I said, wait a minute. I know Sanibel Island. More than Sanibel Island got hit. Meaning, I'm not saying that you should not help all people, including affluent people. I would never say that. I mean, people hurt, but you can't ignore the poor. You just can't continue to do that and then expect them to show up for work. That's that other piece, that part.
Yeah, that's correct. That is most definitely correct. You can't ignore the poor. But number one, we're all American citizens, and we all deserve to be supported during our time of need, particularly when it's dealing with natural disasters such as hurricanes, floods, or chemical spills, or what have you.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what you're going to say. And then, of course, we're going to be talking about Vigilante at the showing of this movie at the bottom of the hour, because we're going to have that tomorrow night at Push. You know, it's when people see, when they see voter suppression in real time, it's just shocking to them. Shocking to them. And we had Wisconsin State Senator Lena Taylor. I was talking to her last night. She said he needs to do a film just on Milwaukee.
60 seconds, everyone.
Thank you so much, Devin. She said just on Milwaukee. She said because that's what we're dealing with in Milwaukee right now. Think about it. For 660,000 voters, when Charles Booker was running for the U.S. Senate in 2018, do you know they had one polling station open for 660,000 voters? Wow. One.
But they're getting very blatant with it. They're getting very blatant with their suppression. Very much so.
Because I'm trying to figure out how these people are going to vote. You know, I mean, if you can even speculate about that, you know, just what do you do? Because they can't set up any. I mean, these folks, where do they go on Sanibel Island? Where do they go in Fort Myers? Where do they go in Naples? Where do they go in the poor areas? Where do they go? And whom do they call? These people don't have mobile
10 seconds,
phones.
everyone.
Stand by. Thank you so much, Devin. But you know, I'm glad God has given me this platform so we can ask these questions. Stand by.
We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, in Chicago and in Minneapolis. We are preparing to host Greg Palast. He will be debuting his film in this part of the country, Vigilante, tomorrow night at Rainbow Push, and tomorrow AM 950 radio, my home station in Minneapolis, St. Paul. They are sponsoring him. Please go to am950radio.com so that you can get more information. You need to be there tomorrow night. And tomorrow night, you need to be at Rainbow Push at 930 East 50th Street, right in the heart of the Hyde Park community. 930 East 50th Street. We're going to start gathering there at 5. We're going to get some nice snacks. Need to know how many of you are coming. It would be so helpful because we want to have enough food for you. You know, we will run out and get some more, but we would like to know how many people are coming. So please reach out to us and let us know how many of you are coming so that we can watch this brilliant new documentary by Greg Palast, who will be with us as he will be selling his books, his documentaries. He'll be signing posters. You don't want to miss it. And we will, of course, begin airing the movie just after 6 tomorrow night. So come on over to 930 East 50th Street. We're going to have a great time. And our morning stars are going to help to make you feel real comfortable. I'm Santita Jackson. It is Monday, October 10th, 2022. It is Indigenous Peoples Day, everybody. Advocates say that the recognition of this holiday, which we have known through the past as being Columbus Day, helps to correct the whitewashing of American history that glorified Europeans and diminished and led to the genocide of indigenous people. Indeed, Christopher Columbus never even got to the United States. He got to Hispaniola. Never got here, which is the other side of Haiti. That's where he was lost, an explorer who was lost. And he thought he was in India. That's why he called indigenous people Indians. He was wrong about that. So this is a day in which we acknowledge the violence committed against indigenous peoples, and we try to correct the wrongs. The only way we can get things right is if we admit that we were wrong, that we wronged people, everybody. So let's think about this. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day to you today on the Santita Jackson Show. Monday, October 10th, 2022. We're going to have a high of 70 degrees, partly cloudy here in Chicago. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 71 degrees, sunny. And the Wild Card Series, boy, it is on and cracking in baseball. Seattle. Oh, wow. Seattle and the Blue Jays. Seattle 10 and the Blue Jays 9. They have another game to go. But Cleveland won their series against Tampa Bay. That's right. 1-0. They shut them out yesterday, but all they needed to do was win 2 games. And the series is tied between the Mets and the Padres. The Mets won yesterday 7-3 over the Padres. And Minneapolis and Chicago faced off against each other yesterday, and the Vikings won 29-22 over the Chicago Bears, everybody. Russia hit several Ukrainian cities today in what appears to be the heaviest wave of missile and rocket attacks since the opening week of the war, according to officials and this CNN report. Multiple explosions shook the Ukrainian capital of Kiev, following weeks of relative calm, prompting widespread condemnation from global leaders. And this is after a damaging blow to Russia just a couple of days ago, as an explosion destroyed part of the bridge linking Russia to Crimea. We will see where all of this goes. Stay tuned to the Santita Jackson Show so that we can give you more information, everybody. Former Governor Bill Richardson said on Sunday that he is cautiously optimistic, his words, that Americans Brittany Griner, the basketball superstar, and Paul Whelan will be released, and suggested they could be freed from Russia by the end of the year. Richardson recently traveled to Russia to discuss the possible release of Brittany Griner and the former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan with Kremlin officials. Richardson also said that he's working with the families of both Americans and coordinating with the White House for their release. He said, quote, "All I can say is that the Biden administration is working hard on it." Free Brittany and free Paul. God bless him. The NFL said, and the NFL Players Association, NFLPA, agreed to update the league's concussion protocol over the weekend. The decision follows a review of the response to the Miami Dolphins quarterback injury on September 25th after he suffered an apparent head injury and had been injured a few days before, and he had been cleared to play. Even though it was clear from his bodily reactions that he'd been traumatized in the brain. Those are some of our headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Some people are saying that that Hurricane Ian is echoing what happened with Hurricane Katrina years ago down in New Orleans, where Black and poor people were ignored by the government in terms of the response to relief efforts. So what gives, everybody? What gives? Hurricane Ian has killed scores of people, and we want to know what Relief is going to the poor. More and more poor people are being paid attention to by corporate media, but they're saying, look, no one told us that we needed to evacuate. Why did they need to be told? Well, they needed to be told because many of them don't have internet. The internet is not a public utility, although it ought to be. That is, it should be something that everybody has access to. People do not. Many people could not leave. If you're in between a paycheck, if as high as gas is, if your paycheck is barely covering you and your living expenses as it is, pick up and leave and go where? Fill up your tank with what money? Think about those things, everybody. Echoes of Katrina. Why is it that people of color and poor people are devastated by these increasingly violent storms? And why are these storms increasingly violent? And why are poor, Black, brown communities especially vulnerable to them? Hilton Kelly is one of my heroes, quite frankly. He is a leading figure in the battle for environmental justice. He has shown a light on environmental racism, particularly in the Texas Gulf, but he's someone who's been recognized all over the world as one of the leading figures in the fight to recognize climate change and to do something about it. Indeed, he is the recipient of the highest prize that can be offered, that can be given to an environmentalist. It's called the Goldman Environmental Prize. Around the world, it is known as the Green Nobel. We welcome you back to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fairly well. How are you this
It's
morning?
always a joy to be with you today. Okay, talk to me.
I appreciate being on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Of course, Community in Power and Development Association. Is it CIDA, CIDA.com?
That's correct.
That's right. So everybody, you can follow up and get more information about his organization. But talk to me. We're now beginning to hear Black and brown and poor people say, wait a minute, no one is helping me with this disaster. Sanibel Island is an affluent place. I don't mind that. I'm not trying to deny anyone anything, Hilton Kelly.
Right.
But it just seems that this is like the same old story. The poor are ignored. Black people are ignored. Brown people are ignored.
Well, that's correct. As a matter of fact, if we could go back as early as 2005 when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, and shortly thereafter, Hurricane Rita hit Port Arthur, Texas. It was back to back, and many of the people that had fled New Orleans came down I-10, headed west, and came into Port Arthur, and we were helping to house those folks. But what's actually going on is that, number one, we have a large amount of toxic pollution that contributes to ground level ozone. And when ground level ozone builds up, what happens is the sunlight gets trapped within those particles, those particulate matter particles, and it helps the planet to warm up, not just in one state, but all over the planet. And once the planet starts to warm, then what you get is a warmer Gulf waters. And when those storms come into the Gulf of Mexico and they hit that warm water, well, what you have is a development of a stronger hurricane, which basically lasts much longer than they have historically. And what we're seeing now is an unprecedented number of hurricanes coming ashore every year because of ground level ozone. And what has to be done to change that dynamic, we have to reduce our carbon footprint. We have to get the oil refineries, the chemical plants, and LNG facilities to reduce the amount of toxins that they're dumping into the air around the planet. So that's one solution to this problem. But yet, at this particular point, we have to look at building more resiliently. I think there are areas all over the South, really here in Texas. Port Arthur's in a low-lying situation, particularly on the west end of Port Arthur. As we know in New Orleans, that the Ninth Ward area, those folks were devastated because New Orleans sits just below sea level. And so when you have people living in low-lying areas historically, well, we're going to continue to be impacted. Now, for years, we've dealt with floods in those low-lying areas, but at the same time, they were manageable. But now The waters are so high, we're talking about 5 and 6 feet of water invading people's homes. And when that happens, no one can live in those situations. But if we recall, back in 1864, when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, many African Americans were forced to live in low-lying areas. Many African Americans didn't have a choice. And other indigenous people did not have a choice as to where they could live due to Jim Crow. We all know this. And so now, fast forward to 2022, well, great-grandmother left that property to her child, and then her child left to her child, and now we have a new generation of people living in those same low-lying areas. But now, today, the hurricanes are getting stronger. Waters are rising higher because of sea level rise, and something has to give. We know that many times when FEMA come out in our community, like here in Port Arthur, in New Orleans, most of the time the Black and brown people only get 20%, if that, of what they need to actually rebuild. When more affluent communities get 100% of what they need, and sometimes FEMA even give them an opportunity at a second dip at those fundings. And why is that? Because they have a voice at the table. They have a voice at the federal level. They have a voice on the state level. And this is what's needed. African Americans have to understand, and the other indigenous people have to understand, that it's critically important that you vote so that you can have a voice at the table as well. We must understand how important it is to have your hand or your voice recognized. Raise your hand and say, we have an issue. We must organize. We must do better with supporting our community.
We're talking with Hilton Kelly, winner of the Green Nobel, the Goldman Environmental Prize, about what's happening in, well, not just Florida, but Jackson, Mississippi. They still have water issues. Indeed, we're collecting water at Rainbow Push still so that we can get it down to Jackson, Mississippi. People are struggling there. We have lead in our water here in Chicago. We've got a lot of issues, Hilton Kelly. And you continue to put politics in this, or should I say voting. Politics isn't everything. But you continue to say, wait a minute, what do they say? If you don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu. Talk to me about that. Well, no, but please talk to me about that. I mean, why is it that particularly now, for example, how will people be able to vote? Or do you think the power structure is counting on people saying, look, I don't have time for that right now. I don't have a place to live.
And that's exactly right. I mean, when you have a predominantly, for instance, like here in Texas is a red state. Randy Weber is my congressman. Randy Weber is a Republican. And in the Black and brown communities here in Port Arthur, Texas, very much like what's happening in Mississippi, like what's happening in Florida, all these communities that have a large constituency that are mainly Republicans, they don't do their due diligence when it comes to protecting low-income communities because they know they have very few voters in those areas. So therefore, it's a game. It's a game that's being played. And very much like with the Environmental Protection Agency, most of your Democrats are for a bigger budget for EPA, but Republicans try to reduce their budget. Why is that? Because the Environmental Protection Agency mainly goes after industries that are having a serious impact on our climate by dumping carbon emissions such as benzene, 1,3-butadiene, sulfur dioxide, all these chemicals. But yet, who benefits from those industries? It's mainly the super rich that have invested in these industries. And this is why they kind of turn the other way and put a deaf ear to the cry of people that are being impacted by these industries. So what's happening is a power struggle. And politics is nothing more than a game, but they're playing a game with people's lives. They're playing a game with our livelihoods. But it's time that all parties recognize the importance of the moderate to low-income population, moderate to low-income communities.
Well, let's stay right there for a hot second, because when people are told to evacuate, if they do get the message, where do they go? Poor people have no place to go. I mean, it's when you have money, you have mobility. The less money you have, the less mobility you have. You're trying to hold on to the home that you've got. And what happens if your home is destroyed? I mean, whether you have insurance or not, you need a place to stay. Is there anything that you think that because these storms are becoming more frequent and they're becoming more fierce, it seems to me that America's only prepared for the sunshine days, the days when everything is going to be fine, when everything is fine. Everything's not going to be fine. Yes. Everything is not always well. I mean, should we have shelters for people? I mean, what kind of emergency preparedness do you think we should be preparing for?
Well, number one, I think that in many communities, there need to be a alerting network system that's audible, that everyone can hear throughout that community, whether they have a cell phone or not. Very much like if, there's, like during World War II, they had these sirens that went off, and they put all these sirens in key communities around the United States, particularly on the West Coast, in case we became under attack by Japan. Okay, but those audible systems work very well. I think that if we use that same idea when it comes to alerting people about a storm coming in, or hurricane, or if there's a chemical disaster from one of our oil and gas industries, and educate people on what those audible bursts mean. You can have one burst for caution, you can have two bursts for prepare to evacuate, and you can have three bursts, which basically says everyone must evacuate now. Because I believe that many people miss those what they call dial-out systems that they use to call people's phones now. I know during some of the storms here in Port Arthur, just like an Amber Alert, your phone goes off. You hear this sound, you look at it, and they give you all the information you need. Well, many people don't have the cell phone, so we need an audible system, number one. And when it comes to housing people, because we have so many storms coming ashore every year now, it's unprecedented. What needs to happen is we need to look at developing a housing community which is used specifically for emergency purposes when large, massive amounts of people have to evacuate, whether it be you evacuating from a tornado, or you're evacuating from a hurricane, or you're evacuating because of a fire, like in California. Every year they're having more and more fires. We need to create temporary communities where those houses are put maybe 50 to 60 miles away from, we know, the hard-hit areas. We know where they are. Let's build a community where people can go and stay temporarily until they can return home, whether it be a year before they can return home or a couple of months, whatever. But we need to prepare, because it seems like this is happening every year, and we're not going to escape that anytime soon until we change our environmental impact.
It has to become a conversation in poor and Black and brown communities, because it's far too often it's not a conversation in our communities. Hilton Kelly, Community in Power and Development Association out of Port Arthur, Texas. Indeed, he's the recipient of the Green Nobel, the Goldman Environmental Prize. I'm so grateful that you're with us today. Let me just very quickly take this call from the tax doctor. Tax doctor, I've got about a minute before we go to break.
Good morning. Great show. I'd like to report in. We had a fantastic town hall meeting yesterday at 2622 West Jackson, Reverend Miller's Church. Folks, I want you to know that if you watch those commercials on TV about Amendment 1, it's misleading. Amendment 1 only affects 12% of the workforce in Illinois, and that is our government workers from the state on down to your local government.
Okay.
Folks, this amendment is dangerous to our community. I'm a union person, come from a union family. Amendment 1 is not in our best interest, because when you look at Section 25, Santita, it would take away the power of our legislators to make laws when it comes to labor policy.
Now
That's said in Section 25.
Well, you said in your comments that unions are heading to Florida also?
No, I said Amendment 1 is dangerous to our community, because when you look at Section 25,
I was also taking, but is there a way that tax doctor can you arc this? Because we've been talking about this this unfolding tragedy in Florida. And just, I mean, we hear you.
Let me say this.
Yeah, I've got about 20 seconds for you. You got to hurry, hon.
Let me say this about Florida.
Okay, hurry.
I am very disturbed with Marco Rubio and the governor. They said in Congress under the Tea Party and voted not to send help to New Jersey.
Absolutely.
Why should we send our dollars down to Florida when they keep voting for people who don't care
Well,
about
hold
them?
on. Tax Doctor, just very quickly. I've got less than a minute. Hilton Kelly. Some people are saying that these people shouldn't move back into these areas that are prone to flood and all kinds of disasters. I guess people would have to move from California. I don't know. What do you say about that? 1 minute belongs to you.
Well, I believe that, number one, they deserve a right to choose where they want to live. And if those communities are still accessible and usable to those communities, where they have culture, where they have family, they deserve to be able to go back if they choose to do so. But they also should be afforded an opportunity to move elsewhere if they choose not to move back in those areas. But imagine if we all retreated from our community because of a fire disaster or a hurricane or tornado or a freezing weather. We'll all end up somewhere in the middle of the country fighting for land. So I think it's time that we learn to feel more resiliently and stop thinking about retreating.
Amen to that. And you know what? And why don't you do something that will not disturb the environment? Remember that commercial, Hilton Kelly? It's not nice to fool Mother Nature. It's not nice to mess with her. For alone, everybody. Well, I mean, I'm just saying that was prophetic. Community in Power and Development Association. That's CIDA, CIDA.com. Can't wait to have you back on the show. You know what? I'm going to have you back on our political panels so we can talk about those things for which we need to be voting in the 2022 midterms. Coming up, Rick Smith, my brother here at WCPT. He and I are hosting Greg Palace tomorrow. Let's talk about it at the bottom of the hour in just a couple of minutes. Back in a minute. Hilton Kelly, I got to have you back.
Yes, I'd love to be back.
Oh.
And I'm always available, but yet I travel quite a bit. So whenever you can catch me, I'll be more than happy to participate.
So you got a phone?
Yeah, you're right. So I'll check in. Maybe I need to check in with you and let you know when something is happening.
That's what you need to do. You got a phone. Well, I'm sounding like my father. Ain't nothing wrong with your fingers.
And you're right. You're absolutely right. Well, I never thought about that. I always, when you invited to the show, that's one thing. But calling in, I didn't want you to think I was trying to be a superstar or anything.
You know what? See, the thing is, this is the way that I look at it. People have said, well, Santita, I wish you'd share more of your opinions. And what I've really tried to do is give people information. And I share more and more of my opinions as time goes on. That having been said, I think that at least my role as I see it is to share information so that you can be empowered and make up your own mind.
That's true.
That's what I want to do. Will I share my opinions? Have a rant every now and then? Absolutely. Of course I do. That having been said, I also want to provide a platform so that you and others can be on it and share your issues and just say, hey, wait a minute. This is because to me, you've got to be part of the voting discussion because voting is part of the discussion in Florida. Where are these people going to vote? They need to vote more than anybody else. My mother's from Fort Pierce, way down at the bottom of Florida. And my grandmother was a migrant worker. Back then the borders were porous before you got Disney World down there. So she used to hop on a boat and go to Havana and chop sugar cane and throughout the Bahamas and through South and Central America. I mean, the first time I went to Havana, my grandmother laid out old Havana for me. Did you go? And then when I came back, she said, did you go to this hotel? Because they have this and that. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like she had been there. She said, yeah, we used to go there. Yeah. Not to have a good time. I would work there, and if we got our wages together, we might be able to go there and go to a dance or something like that. So, but when I think of Florida, this is what my mother grew up in. My mother grew up in South Florida. My grandmother grew up there, and because even as we talk about what's happened with the hurricanes, we talk about Puerto Rico, but we don't talk about the United States Virgin Islands.
Yeah, you're right.
And you know colors all in that, because the USVI is black and Puerto Rico is black but lighter.
Sending Rick Smith and Senator Taylor through. Still no answer from Attorney Jones. I'll try again in a few minutes.
North America, all over the Caribbean, to help.
60 seconds, everyone.
Help local. And that's what's still happening today.
Well, you know what? You can stay right here with us. Now, who do we have? I'm sorry, Devin?
Rick Smith and Senator Taylor.
Okay.
Attorney Jones, I've tried twice.
But that's okay. He's on a bus right now.
Oh, okay.
So it's okay. You can just let him go. Hilton Kelly, stay with us. Stay right here. We're talking about vigilante. Don't leave. I know he is like, what?
All right.
She pulled me into what? Huh? Yeah, you.
I'm good. I can do it.
I know you can. Senator Taylor and Rick Smith, how are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, it's great hearing your voice. Great hearing your voice. And this is we just love Rick Smith here at WCPT. And so this is, she's someone who should be on your show, Rick Smith. This is one of the runaway senators from Wisconsin.
10 seconds, everybody.
Years ago. And he's a brilliant host here at WCPT.
Would love to have her.
Absolutely. Stand by.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820 in Chicago and AM 950 radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Both of our stations, both of my home stations, will be hosting Greg Palast and his movie Vigilante tomorrow night and on Wednesday. So tomorrow night, you want to come to Rainbow Push at 930 East 50th Street. You don't want to miss that. And you want to meet us over at Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church at 7 o'clock on Friday. We're going to be celebrating, have a big, wonderful celebration for Reverend Jesse Jackson's birthday party. My father's like me. He celebrates all month, but people want to celebrate him on his 81st year of life. Let's talk about Vigilante. Let's talk about why Rick Smith said, you know what, we really need to show this film here as they talk about Georgia voter suppression. We need to talk with Wisconsin State Senator Lena Taylor. You remember the Runaway Senators from years ago. That's when I met her. Shocked me, almost made my heart drop when I was happy when I saw her in Reverend's office. I walked in there, I was like, these people are in hiding. What are they doing here? Well, she said, you know what? I understand what's happening in Georgia, but you could have this movie shown. We could shoot one in Milwaukee. He could have his own, he could have the Milwaukee edition of this. Before I get to you, State Senator Lena Taylor, brilliant lawyer and state legislator. Rick Smith, why Vigilante? Why Chicago? Why now? My dear brother, who's on from 8 to 10 every night here on WCPT.
Silencing the voice of workers. It's the moment that we have to all speak up and push back. And what's been happening in this country for far too long is we've got a political party who's been trying to silence the voice of workers at every opportunity. And I don't care, who you are. If you're a working person, we're all in this together. So when you see one person, the old concept of an injury to one being an injury to all, this is an injury to all of us. And if we don't stand up in this moment and fight back, all of us are going to be harmed. So the thought process was, as we were going on our Working Class Heroes radio tour, we were going to come through the Chicago area and we were going to show this movie and talk about bringing people together and uniting us, because I believe the labor movement is where we unite this country and where we move us forward.
Rick Smith, everybody, every night, every weeknight on WCPT from 8 to 10 p.m. Central Standard Time. Tell people about the show. Rick Smith, we do not have a constitutionally guaranteed right to vote. No federal right to vote. And it's been kicked to the states. And we see with vigilante what happens in Georgia, but it has national implications and applications. I mean, this is happening all over the country. I think of the 2018 race in which Charles Booker came this close to becoming the Democratic nominee. He went from 5% name recognition in the state of Kentucky to being within a few points of winning the nomination. They had one precinct open for 660,000 voters. One precinct, one facility. And, you know, we're going to hear from State Senator Taylor in a hot second, because it's just as bad in Milwaukee. I mean, what do you think as we look at working people and people who are ambitious to work, Rick Smith, why should they be with us tomorrow night?
Again, I come back to, when you silence the voice of workers, you destroy our ability to fight for better wages, hours, and conditions. But the reality is that this whole experiment of America, this whole experiment of self-governance, is based on the will of the people. And if the will of the people is silenced, how can you have that go forward? And I fear we're at a moment, and I know in my home state of Pennsylvania, we're at a moment where we have a fascist running for governor who's already said that he doesn't really believe in the voice of the ballot box. If he doesn't like a decision, they may set it aside. We should all be concerned about where we're heading. The sad reality is this isn't about right, left. This isn't about which hat you bought. This is about top down. This is about the wealth and the people who want power against the rest of us. It's that 99% versus 1% frame. And this is where I think, again, we need to be coming together. It doesn't matter which person you voted for in the last election. This is really about democracy. It's about the wonderful experiment of America and this idea that we can have self-rule and that the ballot box matters. The entire foundation of what we have here is in the voice of that box. And if we don't all have access to it, if we don't all have the ability to voice our needs, our wants, our concerns, our hopes, our dreams, then there's not much here, is there?
No, there is not. State Senator Lena Taylor, you said, wait a minute, you're talking about Georgia. You could very well be talking about Milwaukee and Wisconsin. Indeed, you have run away fighting for liberty and justice in the state of Wisconsin. Is voter suppression alive and well in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee?
I hate to have to say it, but voter suppression comes in different forms, and the answer is yes to your question. And Mr. Jones hit the nail on the head when he said it's about democracy. When we left the state to deny quorum to Scott Walker, to basically destroy unions and to deny workers the right to be able to organize, to associate in a workplace. It was basically killing democracy, so to say, in the workplace also, so that people would be able to gather, become a group, become a union, and to be able to negotiate about the conditions of their workplace. And when you stop that voice in the workplace, what you get is a society where people are like that 99% that was talked about, they're working and not working at necessarily living wages. And you have people that are working, but the people who are at the top in the companies are making so much. So that's why then elections of who your electeds are, because those policies are made through legislation. Those policies of whether or not we're going to be a right to work state or what the conditions will be, those policies are made through in state legislatures. And so if we don't allow individuals to know where their voting locations are, or if we close 175 polling locations, so we only have 5, okay, Georgia had 1, in one county is my understanding. But I just want to say we were trying to be just like them because we have 5 in our largest city in the entire state.
No, stop, wait. Rick, did you hear that? In Milwaukee.
Yeah, I did, and it's appalling, and all of us should be appalled, because I don't meet anyone who says in this country that everyone shouldn't have the right to vote. Now we disagree on policies, we disagree on things, but I hope we still agree that we should have the right to have the access to the ballot box. I know in my state of Pennsylvania, they've tried every dirty trick in the book, allocation of resources being a huge part of that, all the voter suppression things from the failed voter ID thing that they tried to put into place to now we got a governor who wants you to have to re-register every year. All of these things are meant to silence the voice of the people, the will of the people. And for right now, it's a certain segment that they've created as the other, but eventually it's going to be all working people. It's going to be you. It's going to be me. It's going to be all of us at some point. So this is why, again, I go back to the frame. This is an injury to one being an injury to all. If we allow one segment of our population to have their voice silenced, eventually it's going to be all of us. So to me, again, the frame here is it's about democracy. It's about, do you believe in the sanctity of the ballot box? Because the foundation of what we have here is based on, hey, do you have the right to voice your concerns? Do you have the ability to make change in your local, state, and federal government? Do you have the ability to have your voice heard? That's the fundamental part of all of this, Santita, and you know it as well as anyone.
Well, I mean, I do. I mean, but I think that trying to help people to see that we all have a buy-in, Senator Taylor, is a really, really big deal. I mean, working people who are unemployed, people who are poor, people who are wealthy, people who are black, white, brown, yellow, red, indigenous. I mean, we need to know that we all have a buy-in here, and that how important is it to vote? Let me step back.
I gotta respond to that because when you say that it's important for people to have a buy-in, you're spot on. And the reason it's important because in moments like this, when we're right in the middle of an election cycle, you need people to be inspired. You need people to want to go and vote. People can't feel that if they feel that their voice has been taken away. And I, just have to say, it doesn't matter if it's Democrats or Republicans doing it. If we are standing on democracy in any kind of way, it's not okay. And it's important that we say it. It's important that we are as passionate, as frustrated, and as forceful with speaking about voter suppression of all types, whether it comes through what happens because of redistricting, whether it is because of what happens with poll locations closing, whether it is because of legislation that is changed so that it makes it more difficult for people to be able to go to the voting box. Whatever the issue is, it needs to be called out because in the end, it affects all of us if people do not trust the process. I saw one of the election officials from Georgia speaking and saying that they want, they want governors elected, both sides, he said, to chill with some of the rhetoric because it discourages people. I understand the concept of what he's saying, but I believe it's important to tell the people the truth. It's why Greg's movies have always been so inspiring to me. It's why I've always made it a point to do showings. I've done, so many showings of the best democracy that money could buy, in particular, because it wasn't happening. We didn't have the experience that I've seen us do now in 2020 as well as in 2022. When you change the polling locations for individuals, 260,000 people all have a different polling location, but you only send out notices for 10%, not even 10%. That's the kind of stuff that causes confusion. So we need that not to happen because now we got a U.S. Senate race happening. And we need people to be inspired to show up like they did for Barack Obama. We need those kind of numbers or greater. And that doesn't happen when people get or feel not heard and disenfranchised.
Rick Smith, it doesn't happen. I mean, and getting people to be this excited, because I think that we focus on our disappointments, and our disappointments, they are real. They are real. They are real. They're things that we voted for and we're still waiting on. That having been said, your vote is the end of the beginning. It's not the beginning of the end. You have to be involved in the process. Yeah, you know this better than anyone, State Senator Lena Taylor from Wisconsin, because every phone call that comes into your district office, every letter you call, you say, wait a minute, that's 100 voters, 600 voters. There's a scientific measurement for that. So when you think your phone call, you think your vote doesn't matter, oh no. Senator Taylor, I'm reaching out to Devin Andrakis because
it matters completely.
It matters completely. Devin, reach out to Greg Powell. No, he's going to join us in a hot
right
second. Now. Okay, well, Greg Powell's is here too.
Wonderful.
But before we bring on Greg, because you were saying that you said to me last night, you said Greg could do a documentary on Milwaukee.
He could. He could do it in Milwaukee. I mean, I do not understand the things that I have argued that we did not, want to see happen. The things that we always have pressed for people to have access to the voting box. See, I don't understand why we're not doing legislation across the nation to encourage more people to vote. Like, how did Iraq and other places have more people coming out to vote than we did?
Because the original idea was never for all of us to vote, right? Lena, now you know this as a lawyer.
That part.
Drop the mic on that.
No, just me. I was the only one who was allowed to vote in this room.
That's just it.
That's right. That's right. And just for clarity,
white landowning males over 21. That was when
that's right.
Original intent is to talk about that. That's what they say, isn't it? That's really what they're trying to say. Mm-hmm. When you had Antonin Scalia saying he was an original intentist, that was the original intent, wasn't it?
I mean, look,
that was. I want to be clear. In Wisconsin, it was in 1865 that my favorite Wisconsinite sued the city of Milwaukee for the right to vote because through referendum, Wisconsin had given Black men the right to vote. In 1865, he sued Ezekiel Gillespie because he went to the city of Milwaukee to try to vote, and he was denied the right to vote. He sued all the way to the Supreme Court of the state of Wisconsin, and in 1866, he got a unanimous decision saying that he had the right to vote. Now, what I don't know is, if he got a chance to execute that and going forward. But what I do know is that he had enough desire to want to vote in 1865. It wasn't a Lena Taylor on the ballot as a state senator. It wasn't a Barack Obama for president. It wasn't none of that. But he still, as a man, as a human being, as a resident of this state, wanted to be able to, what we talking about, exercise his right to vote. He wanted his voice to be heard, regardless if there was someone on the ballot that looked like him or not. He knew that he had a right, a interest that he wanted to be able to exercise. Well, that wasn't women, Black, white, indigenous, or whatever. It was only the first time. And even with that, we are a state that leads in some of the worst disparities in the nation for African Americans. So, you gotta exercise your voice. And then you gotta, like you said, it's only the beginning. Then you gotta work on holding legislators accountable on the outcomes that exist. You gotta, at every level of government, whether it is a school board, whether it is city or county or state or federal, you can't just cast your ballot and walk away.
No, you can't.
It's
well,
like
you know
putting
what?
the cake in the oven.
Hold on, I've got Greg Palace with us, who's going to be with us at Rainbow Push tomorrow night at 930 East 50th Street. You see, you've got a state senator, Lena Taylor, all riled up. You're going to have to go to Milwaukee and do your documentary there. You need to do that.
Well, absolutely. And I should say, Senator, that that in the film, who I do get up to Milwaukee in the film because who's behind the film is Vigilante, and who's paying for this operation of vigilantes knocking off literally hundreds of thousands of black voters, and that is the Bradley Family Foundation of Milwaukee. So I went up there to ask them why they're spending their money. Remember, they shut down those plants in Milwaukee, the Allen Bradley plants, which is the biggest employer, by the way, in Milwaukee for quite a while. And they shut them down, sent the plants to China, took the money and put it into basically this vote blocking operations, vote suppression operations. That's in the film. It's a fun, by the way, while it's an important film for people to see, it's still a movie. It's an entertaining movie. I don't know if we're going to have popcorn, but it's a real popcorn eating movie. There's some really sad, tough stuff, and there's some really crazy stuff like the vigilante. We have one vigilante who dresses up like a vigilante with literally pearl-handled 6 guns, which are loaded, cowboy hat, the whole shtick. And he thinks he's a vigilante. He's a guy who personally blocked 4,000 voters in just one county in Georgia, in Muskogee. And you can laugh, but he is actually chairman of the Republican Party down there. That's the whole point. These guys, you could laugh at them, and there'll be a lot of weird laughs. In fact, and then you'll see me get thrown out of one house by one of these vigilantes, which there's a shotgun next to her door.
I was glad she did not have a gun on her. I saw the clip. Rick Smith. I said, Greg is half crazy. We all know this. He goes in there with his little scoop newsworthy hat on. I said, this woman is going to. She starts screaming at him.
And swearing like a sailor. I couldn't put it all in unless I wanted an X rating. I'm not kidding. So you get some of this, but I got to tell you, it is a movie, but it's a movie that's going to tell you things you've never seen before. And yes, this trick is coming from Wisconsin and going back to Wisconsin. It's moving into 9 states. It's not just about Georgia, but it's also about the smothering of American history. The governor of Georgia, who pretends he's some small businessman who suddenly made it to the governor's mansion, it was his family that first brought captive Africans to Georgia. It was quite a battle because Georgia, believe it or not, was a state that prohibited, it wasn't a state, it was a territory that prohibited slavery. It was banned. This is the history you will learn. That's the source of the money of the governor, and that's why they want to stop so-called critical race theory, because they don't want to explain this history. So you get the history, you get the crazy vigilantes, you find out something about, as Martin Sheen says in the introduction, by the way, it is narrated by the great Rosario Dawson, but Martin Sheen says, listen, it ain't just Georgia. This trick is coming to a state near you. And we know it's already in Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, Arizona, Pennsylvania, this brand new system of individuals challenging other voters. But it's an old Klan trick, as you'll find out also in the film. So we'll have some fun. We'll have some sad moments together because there's some heartbreaking things in this film too. But it'll be a movie, and this is Greg Palast. I'd love to see you there tomorrow night at Rainbow Push headquarters on East 50th Street, right? East 50th.
That's right.
Remember my old Chicago?
University of Chicago. Remember your old neighborhood.
Yeah, I lived in Chicago 9 years. Worked at the Steelworkers Union. And Rick and I will be talking about that at some point. But it'll be wonderful. Come at we're going to do meet and greets 5 to 6 p.m. Around 6, we're going to start the film. We'll have a questions and answers afterwards. Rick Smith, Santita Jackson, and I think
Reverend is trying to get there.
Family Affair.
Reverend. It's a little late for him, but he wants to be there, and so you're going to see him early on, and that's a good thing. But Rick Smith, he's my brother here at WCPT. He's on from 8 to 10 every night. Rick, the last minute belongs to you.
this is really an important moment. If what you've heard in these last several minutes hasn't angered you to get active and to get engaged and to make sure that you're registered to vote, make a plan to vote, and get out to vote, I don't know what's going to get you. This is one of those moments where democracy is participatory. And if you sit on the sidelines, at some point you're going to find that there's nothing left for you to get involved in. So right now, make sure that you're registered to vote, you got the plan to vote, and you get out there on election day and you cast your ballot. I mean, that's the reality. And oh, by the way, come to Rainbow Push tomorrow night to see Greg Pallett's movie. It's fantastic.
And Rick, when can we hear you on WCPT?
Every weeknight, 8 to 10 p.m. right here on WCPT and AM 950 in Minneapolis.
Thank you. I'm like, don't you dare come in here and not tell people. Also,
the RickSmithShow.com. Make sure you check out our website. You can find all of our programming right there.
All right. I love it. Okay. I've got a half a minute for you. State Senator Taylor, she's trying to get in, but she's got a previous engagement, but she's trying to get in. Senator Taylor.
I'm trying to move stuff around, but if not, I too want to be able to not only do showings in Milwaukee and around Wisconsin. I'd love to try to make sure that you're connected with people in Georgia if you've not, so they can try to show it. And if people can't come, Greg, how can they get access to your stuff?
30 seconds, Greg.
Black Voters Matter Fund, the wonderful Latasha Brown, who's starring in the film, by the way, they're going to arrange a special virtual showing. So we'll announce that through Black Voters Matter Fund.
All right. And we'll pass it around because Latasha always wants to get the word out. I love you, everybody. Cannot wait to be with you. Rick, can you join me again tomorrow morning?
Absolutely.
All right, 7 o'clock. I got you.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. I'm going to get Greg Pallas on too. Again,
Yes, I'll be in Chicago.
Look, that's right. We're going to make this happen. 930 50th Street tomorrow night. You don't want to miss it, everybody. It's going to be great. Starting at 5 o'clock, and we're going to be there for a little while. It's going to be great. I love you, everybody. Devin, thank you for a great show. God bless you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. And tell somebody you love that you love them and mean it. I love you, everybody. Have a great day. I'm Santita Jackson. God bless. Does anyone want to say anything else to my Facebook audience, to all my people on all my different streams?
Well, this is Greg Pallas. We're going to be we will be in Chicago tomorrow night. That is October 11th. Then the 12th with Rick Smith, the WCPT's Minneapolis station. And on the 19th in Oakland, California at the extraordinary Grand Lake Theater. That's the 19th of October. And finally, the Hollywood screening with the ACLU on October 26th. So go to gregpallas.com, get all the info, and if you're in Chicago, you better be there.
Yeah, I wish I'd known about the AM 950 radio because Rick and I are on together on AM 950 radio up in
Rick
Minneapolis.
Will be with me in Minneapolis, yes.
I wish I could get up there because that's my home station up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. They're wonderful. Chad Larson and the whole team. They're fantastic. Yes. Everyone, hope to see you tomorrow night, and many of you are telling us that you're coming, and so we're very excited about it. We're going to have a great time. Greg is going to start signing books, selling books, signing, all of his posters and things like that. We cannot wait to do that, and he'll have his documentaries there too. You need to get them. You need to purchase them. Yeah. Freedom is not free, and we're constantly we're constantly having to raise money. I know I have to raise money to be on this show because. Yeah. When you speak and speak freely, it costs you. You don't get the corporate support, and that if you decide to go down that road, that's okay. But just know that we need your support. We need your support. Greg needs your support so that he can keep on going and growing your story, telling our stories. That's very, very important.
And we will make it available to church groups and other groups to see the film. And we are doing all kinds of special showings in Georgia.
All right.
especially. But it is a national issue. But let's face it. I've got Georgia. Everything is on the line for all of us, and of course that's true of Wisconsin too. Let's face it. So this is an important film for all of us, but it's also a movie that you'll enjoy. That's why I want people not to get scared off this is good for me, but I won't be entertained. You'll be entertained. I guarantee it.
Well, that's how you do. Rick and Senator
that's
Taylor.
Why I was asking.
Okay.
That's why I was asking how people could get the film, because I know that you've sold them like by DVD or that kind of thing before. I don't know if that's not happening now with this particular documentary, but I just think it's important for people to buy and have accessible for them to be able to see at home, even if they can't come out to one of the showings. I've bought them in the past myself.
We are trying. I'm dealing with Hollywood distributors who are already not happy that I'm putting this out now, but I said it's just too important because, especially in Georgia, because of the. So we are doing these special releases, but if you have a showing you would like to do, lovely.
Yeah, this is what I was going to say, Senator. We're going to be in Milwaukee. I would love to team up and do a joint showing with you while we're there.
Oh, for sure. When?
I'm going to text you all simultaneously right now, and we're going to Senator. May I do that?
Of course,
okay.
Of course. I find this my duty to make sure that we inspire people to see the movie, to protect our democracy, and of course to inspire people to, go out and vote. And if you understand what's going on, I really believe it's the kind of thing that will make you say, I'm going to make sure that I stay involved.
Well, you know what? I'm putting Greg on this as well, so everybody can be right here, and so that you can get in touch with her like right now, Rick. You will know that I'm someone who I do this all the time because I want people to be in contact with each other. Okay,
you're a matchmaker.
Connector.
I try to be.
She's a connector. That's right.
I try to be. I think it's important. Otherwise, what am I doing here?
Facebook listeners and her radio listeners, always get great information, great guests. They are challenged to be active citizens, not just on the sidelines. I love it.
Well, I love it. In fact, I'm going to call you right after this is over, but I'm texting you all. I'm texting you all right now, just because I don't want this moment to pass. And Greg Palast, I have like 50 numbers for Greg, but I'm just.
It's a sick.
We're still on that. We're still on the air. We're still on. So I got you.
I know. So that's what I'm just saying. The one that's area code 631.
Okay, that's what I do. That's why I'm like.
That's myself. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna say it over the air, please.
Okay, so wait. Okay, so you all consider yourselves connected. I just sent you texts. Everybody got a text. You should have gotten it just now. So let's work with Senator Taylor. She's trying to move things around. She might not get in here tomorrow night, but she really, really wants to be here, and she wants to have a showing there. And Rick, you should have her on your show. It's just
absolutely.
So that's
Would
really
love to,
important.
and I'm looking forward to putting together an event to bring people out in Milwaukee to see the film and come out and meet. But I'm looking forward to it. This is going to be great.
Let me know. I'll come up there, and the next time you go up to Minneapolis, I'll go with you. Or I'll meet you there.
All right. I'm looking. It's beautiful.
Okay. I love it. And I wish I could go.
My brother is in Minneapolis. Maybe I'll come.
What? Don't make me hop on a plane. Don't make me do
we
that.
can all pile into the bus and we can all drive up together.
I would love to do that. I really would.
Sounds like fun.
I would.
Well, that's what we're doing right now. Me and the crew, we're out here doing our Working Class Heroes radio tour. We're going to small cities and towns across, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa, and talking to voters, talking to people, and trying to reconnect and re-energize working people to vote in their interest. I mean, we're in a moment, I think, that at a crossroads where we've got an administration that's pushing to reshore manufacturing, reinvest in our nation's infrastructure, and talking about strengthening unions and promoting unions. I think we're at a good point. I want people to be energized, excited, and angry that there's somebody trying to take their vote. This is an important election, and I think this movie plays exactly into what we're talking about here on the road.
I think so, and I think interestingly. I'm sorry. Please.
I was just going to say I'd love to anything in Wisconsin that you're doing. I hope that you do some during this election cycle, because we have a candidate running for U.S.
in Wisconsin over a week.
That is wonderful, because we have a candidate right now running for U.S. Senate that's trying to do and has used his campaign to promote workers and to talk about the needs.
He's fantastic.
Workers.
You love Mandela Barnes. Hope he wins. We've had him on the show. Looking forward to having him back here in the next couple of weeks as we go through Wisconsin.
You know what? Could you send me a contact for him? I'm going to get him on the show, my show.
I'll work on that if
please. Would you?
But you know your
fine. When I actually, Greg Palast, I did interview Mandela Barnes we are doing a follow-up. By the way, we are doing a follow-up with Wisconsin, and I have Mandela Barnes on camera. I didn't know he was going to run for Senate at the time as Lieutenant Governor. He is quite extraordinary, and he had seen my film, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, and so we were familiar with each other's work. He did amazing community work before he was lieutenant governor, by the way. Amazing guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so great guy. But, again, Wisconsin's terrible. I did a report for Black Voters Matter Fund about purges in Wisconsin, a system, again, funded by the Allen Bradley Foundation, where they were knocking off, they had this system, Eric, where they knocked off 135,000 voters, or tried to. I went through that list with our experts and found out that about a third of the list were completely faulty. It was just every single person. In fact, I believe it or not, I work with the Washington Post on this, and their statisticians working with me too, they took the list of the people that were wrongly removed, and almost 100% of them were either in African-American census districts in Milwaukee or students in Madison. And those are the targets. And I talked to some of these people who were on the list of people that they're blocking. They said, they didn't live in Milwaukee anymore. They didn't live in Madison. It's students who moved from one dorm room to another. In Milwaukee, it's renters moving from one place to another. You're not supposed to lose your vote if you stay within your county, but that's what they were doing. But it was blocked. After we did our report, the State Elections Board did block it, but it's brutal there. Wisconsin is a real vote suppression battleground, not just a Senate battleground, because frankly, if they let the people vote, guys like Ron Johnson are out.
Well, I just wanted to say some elected, in particular, I recall when the purging happened, were purged off the list. And, some of these things are things that have happened via legislation, but some of these things are things that happen based on administration. And in Milwaukee, some of the challenges that we've had have not, just been party-based. And so that is part of why I believe that just voter excitement about coming out in these elections is not always there. And so that's the reason we have to fight for democracy and fight for access and fight for fairness at the ballot so that people will want to be engaged also.
And
be high.
Well,
I have to tell you, Wisconsin, I found, was really a brutal state because the Republican legislature, for example, when they passed the ID law, I was talking to one of the members of the Wisconsin Election Board. They designed the ID law that said you have to have a state ID to vote, but they worded it in such a way that you couldn't use the student ID from the University of Wisconsin, even though it's a state ID.
That's correct.
Photo.
That is correct. That is correct. And the problem with that is some people may not have, a state ID. But if you've gone through the process of being a student, the university has had to get certain information from you in order for you to have the ID. There's no reason that can't be used. It's a state-run organization. So why, should we not be able to use that? It is yet again another way of trying to chip away. See, these elections, statewide elections, have been won by like 30,000 and 20,000, 24,000 votes. So when you're skimming votes in all of these different ways, purging or changing polling locations and not notifying people, or all of these different things, having individuals at polling locations making people feel uncomfortable, all of these kinds of things move just a few numbers of people, and you ultimately get right to those numbers that make it hard for statewide elections to be won, because redistricting has already put its finger on the scale so that we're not getting fairness in party distribution of, elected, because they unfairly tilted the map to Republicans.
It was bad.
Well, we know
so this will be good. Like I say, this come on out. If people on Facebook Live, let me tell you, you'll want to catch this film in Milwaukee. Excuse me, it won't be in Milwaukee. Well, they're going to show it in Milwaukee, so great with Rick Smith. We'll work this out in the Senator, and Chicago tomorrow, the 11th, Minneapolis, the 12th. Then the following Wednesday, or a week from Wednesday, in the 19th in Oakland, and then a week later in Hollywood.
Well, I am excited. I wish I could be in LA. Oh gosh, I love it. But look, I'd go so many places, because I think that this is so important for all of us to be a part of this movement.
The biggest thing that makes me happy are those showings in Savannah and Macon, Georgia, and Columbus, Georgia, et cetera, because that's getting it out into the communities, and that's been very heartening. People are prepared when they get challenged. That's a big thing. In fact, I just got an a text from Gerald Griggs, the head of the NAACP of Georgia. He's on top of this. He wants people to be ready, because what happens is it also slows. One of the things they want to do, they've jammed the lines. So you have 5-hour lines, and in Georgia you can't give someone a bottle of water, or that's literally a felony crime, while they're waiting in line 5 hours in Georgia heat. And then they start challenges, and it holds up the line, or people get frustrated. They give up. We don't want people to give up, no matter what. Don't let them take your vote. And if you have any problems, Barbara Arnwine is standing by at 800-hour vote. We can't. In fact, one of the best things that happened in 2020. Which shocked the GOP, was when the groups, whether C.K. Hoffler, Barbara Arnwine, and New Georgia Project, NCUFO, these great people, ran ballot curing operations. They would challenge your vote, and they would take you to the county offices to get your vote back. And they were shocked. Literally, you had thousands of people had their votes counted despite the challenges. And understand, Joe Biden won Georgia by just over 11,000 votes, completely. If they didn't do that the business of curing, what they call curing people's ballots, getting their ballots counted. So we want people to fight this. It did make a difference. It literally changed the state. And it's not whether you're for or against Joe Biden or Trump or whatever. It's about letting Americans vote.
That's right.
Having a voice.
Don't let them take it. Don't let them take it.
I need to say one quick thing, Santita. One of the things people need to know is, even if you don't have your ID or you don't have whatever, you can ask in many states, I know you can in Wisconsin, for a provisional, they call it, ballot. And so that way you can cast your vote. And what Greg is talking about is you have a time period to come back with that provisional ballot put in to make sure that you cure it so that your vote counts.
Right.
And
you can then bring the right ID.
Exactly.
Well, you know
it's
what?
ridiculous that you have to have these things to be. You know, my wife is Swiss,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't register voters. They think it's ridiculous. If you go in to vote, they don't assume you're a criminal, illegal voter. Just like when you walk into a store, they don't assume you're a shoplifter. And they have a larger immigrant population per cap, percentage-wise than America. They have open borders with other nations, and yet they don't even have voter registration. They don't ask for IDs or voter registration. You go in to vote, you vote.
Sure, but
Europeans are stunned at the American voting system. What are all these hoops we have to jump through?
Because we've racialized classism. They understand classism. That's all that this is. That's all it is. Racism is a form of classism, not the opposite. So they understand it. It's just, it looks black, it looks brown, it looks poor, but this is what we do. That's why we still have kings and queens. So the thing is, either we're going to decide that every human being on earth has certain inalienable rights or not. And I think we're at that inflection point in human history, not just in the United States. Because everybody's doing something that's a little nuts. To be frank with you. We deny people all kinds of rights everywhere. And we just need to stop it. And more people, I don't have to worry about it. Because the generation behind me and behind them and they are getting tired of it. They are saying and doing things that are shocking us. You can debate, who should marry and how people should live. These kids have already gone down the street with that. You can just go on, you can let all this go. These kids have gone on, and good for them. Good for them. So now we need to catch up. America's original intention was never to let everybody vote. The oligarchs and the monarchs were having a fight. And it turns out those people who were not to the manor born finally won one. And it changed everything, and good for us. But now we've got more work to do, Greg. So you got more cities to go to. Bless his heart.
Well, actually, and Rick Smith brings up an important point. I was literally going to use the line you just said. I was actually going to have in the film, but the director cut it out, which is that vote suppression is class war by other means.
Absolutely.
The reason that they are picking out students, voters of color, is that it's also a group that is economically vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And this is a way to keep an economically vulnerable group vulnerable.
Isn't that what Reverend was talking about yesterday?
Yep.
Poor people, you don't campaign in poor communities. And if you don't vote, Lena, Senator Taylor, and Rick, you are not at the table. You don't have a seat at the table. You are on the menu, my friend. That's why the vote equalizes everything. It changes.
To your point, I've never had my polling place changed. I've lived in fairly reasonable middle class, fairly affluent areas, and to hear that every election cycle they're changing polling places in some places should be appalling. I mean, I've been very fortunate, I guess, in my life that most of my voting life I've been in the same voting district, over and over and over again, and they never change it. And I talk to people who they live in areas where their polling place changes every couple of election cycles to where it's a guessing game where they're going to go to vote. They show up and it's not there. There's some real problems, especially because we're talking about poor people. We're talking about the others, if you will. And that's, it's class warfare just by a different name. And they are using that division to rob us blind. I mean, it's purely economic.
But it's also racial because that's what we do in America. That's how we get down. But that having been said, it needs to stop. And I think we have a unique opportunity, and many people might not want to hear this, for the right and the left to come together as we're looking at the integrity of elections, as we're looking at the integrity of the vote. If people could drop their foolishness, we can make a decision about every human being having the right to vote. They know the government knows how to chase you down. I just got 2 letters from the IRS last week, 3. you know, that was going to happen. I get it. And I said, you all know how to find me, but you closed more than 100 polling places in Chicago during the primary. It impacted more than 100,000 voters, Lena. They closed more than 100 polling places. They were like, well, it was COVID. I'm like, look, y'all, you all have had, if Amazon can become is on track to become $1 trillion company, you mean to tell me you can't figure out how to get me a polling place? Are you serious right now? What is that?
Exactly.
Come on, get out of here. Lena, I hope you can be with us tomorrow night, but I certainly want you on the air tomorrow morning. And of course, with Rick and with Greg, because you're right up the road from us, but I think it's important for you to continue to amplify what is happening in Milwaukee. Milwaukee is one of the most challenging places for Black people and poor people to live in the United States of America.
Yeah.
And we have got to put that story out because there's a direct correlation between, Rick, as you say, working people and people who want to work, and people who are working who are not making enough money. Oh my gosh. Come on, y'all. I mean, we are a storm away from a disaster ourselves. We could all be Florida. And if they told you within, say, and just think about it. If they gave you 6 hours to move, where would you go? Could you go anyplace? Are you in between paychecks? Do you have a car? Could you fill it up? When they keep talking about gas is now down to under $4 a gallon, not in my neighborhood. And I live in I live in a mixed community. In my neighborhood, no. It's almost $6 a gallon. Who could do that? We can't even afford to go get an emergency room visit. Are you kidding me? Think about that. So I love you all. Is there anything anyone else wants to say before I push on over to Push? Because Greg, I'm going to see Barbara, and Rick, I'm going to see Barbara Arnwine today, and Daryl Jones. They're coming over to Push at 10 o'clock.
If we could, just a technical thing, make sure that everyone's happy that the film is working. We sent the files. Want everyone to test it, but I will be there tonight. So
I'm going over there. We're going to check on that now because we're getting another screen and all of that. So, and Rick, I will talk with you a little bit later, not just tomorrow morning, but a little bit later so you and I can do a little choreography. But tomorrow, mi casa es su casa. Okay?
Fantastic.
We're
All
doing
right.
this
So
together.
I'm coming in tonight. See you tomorrow.
All right. And I'll talk to you in the morning because we're going to do that too.
Yes.
We're going to continue to push. I love you all. Lena, let me know what's going on. Lena, I'm going to call you right back. Senator Taylor. Love you all. Bye-bye.